Horror Film Festival fans. We are back with another interview, somewhat of an exclusive interview this time, as we talk to Mr. Ian McCulloch, someone who is going to be at the festival. You're going to be able to meet him, get some signatures. We're going to be showing Zombie Flesh Eaters and 2 episodes of Survivors, the British TV series from way back in the 70s, which I can't wait to talk about. But yeah, February the 27th through to the 2nd of March, you can come down there and you can see all the movies we have on show, 160 odd movies across 8 screens over 4 days. Zombie Flesh Eaters is showing on Saturday the 1st on screen 1 at 1 p.m. and then we'll have a Q&A with Ian after that. And then we've got 2 episodes of Survivors showing on Sunday the 2nd of March, screen 8 at 2 p.m. We'll be getting a Q&A after that, I believe, as well. But first of all, Ian, how are you this good fine day?
Well, I'm pretty good. I presume you're in sunny Essex and I'm in windswept and rain-swept southwest of Scotland.
Well, you see...
I can hear the rain spattering at the window as I talk to you.
Well, you see, that's where we are closer than you think, because I am actually in Berwick-upon-Tweed. I live in Berwick, right on the border. So I'll be down there in a couple of days, as will you be. So I'm looking forward to meeting you down there again. I spoke to you last year. We had Spencer has got photographic evidence of this. Yeah. So I guess first of all, we'll get into yourself properly in a second. But how did you find Romford last year? How did you enjoy the festival?
Well, I found it through SatNav, I'm happy to say. Didn't get me lost. I got lost going to the car park. I got lost coming out of the car park as well, actually. I sort of got lost going to the hotel, and I got lost going out to eat. Other than that, and I'm afraid I'm not a fan of eel pies in Romford, but the festival itself I thought was absolutely fantastic. And last year they didn't show any of mine, but Spencer invited me for the Saturday, and I liked it so much that I stayed for the Sunday. I thought it was beautifully organised and full of really friendly people. And they said the nice thing about conventions is that there's nobody there who hates you or thinks you're the worst actor in the world. They're all people who like the work you've done, and for some reason or other, they usually like you personally.
Well, I spoke to you for a good 5, 10, 15 minutes, and you're a very easy person to like, Ian. So don't sell yourself short on that one. So I want to take you back a little bit before we talk about Zombies, Flesh Eaters, and Survivors. And I want to go back a little bit further and find out a little bit more about how you got into acting. What was your pathway into being an actor and getting into this crazy industry?
Okay, well, as you can tell from my accent, I was born in Clydebank, and then moved to London, went to boarding school. And then when I was about 15, I did a play at boarding school, and the parents of one of the other children was a teacher at RADA, Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. And he thought that I could become an actor when I left, and that I could do character parts and sort of juvenile lead parts, that I would have a range of things that I could play, and that I would do reasonably well. So from that time, let's say when I was about 15, 14, the play was called The Government Inspector by Gogol. I always thought that was what I was going to do. And I had to do my national service, which I did 2 years in the army in Germany, and all the way through those 2 years, I thought that was what I was going to do. Then I went to Oxford University and just presumed that if I got various parts in sort of college or university plays, that I'd get a chance of showing that I could act, and hopefully at the end become an actor. I mean, much to the horror of my mother, who from about the age of 3 said that I was going to become a doctor, because doctors made lots of money, they got big pensions, and they lived happily ever after. And I said, at Oxford, I was sort of spotted by, first of all, the Royal Court, and then the Royal Shakespeare Company. And eventually, I say 2 terms before I set my finals, I did an audition on stage in London with Vanessa Redgrave. And 2 weeks after that, they rang up and said, we'd like to offer you a long-term contract at Stratford. You'll be under contract for 4 years. You will be taking over the role of Posthumus in Shakespeare's Cymbeline from the actor Patrick Allen. You'll play it for about 6 times in that season, and you'll also be appearing in various other plays at the Aldwych and premiere at the Edinburgh Festival. So I was more than happy to sign, and I sat my last exam on a Wednesday morning. I failed that last paper because I left after about half an hour. I then got on my motorbike, I drove to Stratford, and that same Wednesday afternoon, I was rehearsing at Stratford on stage with Vanessa Redgrave.
That's
So
awesome.
I started, and it was all downhill from there. But it was a great start.
It was a great start. It was a great start. And many of our fans and many of the people that will be at the festival probably will remember you mostly for the TV show Survivors, a British TV show that was massive at the time, and again had a little bit of a resurgence a couple of years ago, which we'll talk about. It's for obvious reasons why. How did Survivors come about to you? How was this offered to you, and what was it about the role of Greg Preston that was like, yeah, I'm going to do this show. I want to be part of this.
Well, as you probably know, I mean, it was devised by Terry Nation, and we started in 1975, early in 1975, and the year before I'd done an episode of Colditz, which was directed by a gentleman called Terence Dudley, and I had a fantastic part in that. Really sort of showed a strong part. I mean, the best part I've ever had on television. And as sort of time went by, and I was sort of told I had a really glum time before I did Colditz, and I sort of seriously thought about emigrating. Though where I'd go and what I'd do, I actually had no idea. But I just thought I've got to get out of this sort of place where things just aren't going as well as they should. But when I did survive, Colditz, the sort of production people said, well, wait till it comes out, because when it comes out, I mean, you're really going to be in demand. So it's shown, and for 2 weeks the phone didn't ring, which didn't cheer me up too much. And then it started ringing, and I then did a pilot version for BBC Scotland of Wax Fruit, which was meant to be the sort of BBC Scotland's version of the sort of Forsyth Saga. And I did a film called The Ghoul with Peter Cushing, and then I did something else. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call from that same Terry Dudley saying that he was doing this new show called Survivors, and he wanted me to play the part of Greg, who he described as an American engineer and the sort of second lead in the series, because the main lead was going to be Carolyn Seymour. And so we were going to have a woman's lead all the way through it. I had no idea what the character was like, but it was going to be a sort of 13-part series with if it worked, sort of chance going on to series 2, series 3, etc. And so without seeing a script, just happy because I enjoyed working with Terry before, I just sort of said, yes, please include me in the team.
And of course it's kind of like an apocalyptic kind of story. It's end of days type thing, pandemic coming in, and all that kind of thing. How much of Ian McCulloch is in Greg Preston, or vice versa? How much of Greg Preston's in Ian McCulloch?
No one's ever asked me that before, and I don't think know that I know the answer. I don't know. I mean, I see the script, and I sort of say the lines to myself, and then I say the lines as I think the character, who is supposed to be a sort of loner, sort of independent guy who doesn't want to be connected with too many people, doesn't want to get involved with anyone at that particular time. How much of it's me, I actually don't know. I mean, I think all actors, you have to throw a bit of yourself into it. But basically, I mean, I was just playing whatever was written on that page. I mean, in all honesty, and I don't do it with anything I ever do, I don't go things into too deeply. I mean, it's for other people to see these things rather than me.
No, that's cool. That's cool. And as I mentioned before, a little bit further back, back in 2020, we had a scenario in the world, and of course, it kind of mirrors Survivors a lot in a way. Survivors kind of predicted it loosely, if you don't mind me saying. What was that like when that kind of came out, and then all of a sudden people were really watching the show again and really getting back into it, and there was a surge in popularity? How was that? And when it did happen, were you kind of sitting there thinking, I know what to do, I've got this covered?
Personally, no, because I hadn't learned anything that was going to help me that I hadn't known before. Um, it was a peculiar time because, I mean, obviously it was horrible for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I got COVID, but not till sort of way into it when it was sort of going away. You just thought how prescient it actually, had been. Um, when we sort of did it, I mean, people said to Terry Nation, is this science fiction? We said, no, it's not science fiction, it's science fact. Because when we were doing it, there was already Marburg disease, which was rife in Germany, which was a killer disease, which is very, very similar to the COVID that eventually arrived. And there was also, just as we started the first filming, there was a disease in West Africa called green monkey disease, which seemed to echo what we were sort of doing in 1975 on set. And then, of course, there was this big long gap to COVID, and everything seemed exactly the same. And those, the opening credits, which I think are the best music and the best opening credits of any sci-fi show I have ever seen, and wondrously effective. That sort of seemed to characterize exactly what was happening in the world. And then as the music faded out and you got onto the sort of story, that was sort of something completely different. So in that case, and the effect that it had, the 99% of the world's population sort of going, it was sort of close to what might have happened with sort of COVID before it was eventually taken care of. But then the story went off into how, obviously, as the title says, how people survived, and there was less of the sort of medical stuff, and more sort of drama, and more sort of arguments, more sort of passions and all the rest, rather than things that were sheerly medical.
And with a heavy hitting show like that, which at the time would have been heavy hitting, and obviously like as people watch it now or a couple of years back when all that was kind of, I mean, it still is sort of around, but were there any scenes in there that you remember being particularly hard to film, but you're really just massively proud of when you see it on the screen?
Well, when we did it, we were all told that we were sort of doing sort of pioneering work. It was being shot in a way that had never been done before, because you probably know it was done using mainly outside broadcast cameras with a crew who mainly did sort of football matches for sort of Saturday night TV. And that we were doing something, an end of the world thing, which again was sort of fairly original. There were no sort of big stars in it. There was no music in it. So we were told that we were doing something that hadn't been done before, that we were all sort of pioneering. And the great thing about it was that everyone, from the producer right the way down to the guys that called you onto the sort of set, and everyone was involved and everybody wanted to do their best. And to me, the most effective scenes in it that I thought were effective in a horrifying sort of way was the very first episode. In fact, I mean, I'm not in, my character is in it, but I just thought it was sort of brilliantly done, brilliantly acted, very cleverly written by Terry Nation, who set it up with really an absolute minimum of effort and a maximum of effect. So just watching that had a big effect on me. Nothing else in it other than one of the episodes they're going to show at Romford on Sunday, Law and Order, had sort of quite a big effect on, I think most of us were doing it. Most of us took strong views as to what was sort of happening in that episode. And I think most of us sort of came down almost on the moral side of not doing anything. That's sort of desperate at the end of the episode. But those two, the rest of the series was just sort of action, drama, interaction between sort of the characters and the sort of guest people who sort of came in, and a mix of styles and writing, which was sort of varied a great deal. Some of which sort of I found pretty disappointing. But the big bonus of it, especially for this series, was that everyone sort of got involved in it. Everyone felt part of the team. No one was showy, no one was starry. We all went out eat together, we drank together, we all probably in hotels. It was a team effort, and it worked as a sort of team effort.
Yeah, it had a fantastic cast, and then in terms of your guest stars as well, I mean a plethora of just awesome guest stars in there as well. Is there was there anyone in particular that you remember working with that you just sort of like you had like the most amazing camaraderie with on the show?
I don't think so. I mean, most of them I'd known from sort of working in rap or other sort of television series.
Yeah,
And it was a bit like people sort of say, being in the Navy, you're in the biggest and best club in the world because you meet people when you in one station, wherever you are, station in the world, and then you meet them somewhere else, and it's as if you never not seen them. You saw them only sort of yesterday. So it was just like being in a big club, and I don't. No one struck me other than being either a superb actor or
yeah.
a good company.
And of course, we're going into Zombie Flesh Eaters now. We're also showing that at the festival. I can't wait for people to see that up on the big screen again. So you were mostly known for your kind of your, as you say, your theatre background at the start, and then you went into British TV and things like that, and then you decided to make the move into Italian horror. How did that come about? How did this pivot come about at that time?
As you can see over my shoulder, there's a zombie poster. Um, Survivors was a huge success in various other countries, but especially in Italy,
Yeah.
and a huge success. Uh, I went there when I went to do Zombie to film it. They just finished showing the first series, and I was mobbed. I've never been mobbed anywhere in the UK, anywhere in my life. I've even come close to it. I mean, at Stratford, you used to come out from doing a matinee in the theatre at Stratford, and there'd be about 400 schoolgirls in yellow blazers who all wanted your autograph. And you put your head down and signed away, and we looked up, there were another 400 with green blazers. But that was the closest one came from Montreal. That was just because they, had been to see a Shakespeare play. But nothing had ever happened to me like that before. And in Italy, I mean, while I was doing it, I was mobbed twice. Once, I'm afraid to say, in the Vatican, where I was walking around and was spotted. And they started, big group of girls, and they started moving towards me, and I started moving in the opposite direction. I ran out of the Vatican. And the other was on a beach, the place called Latina, where we were filming. And the same sort of thing happened. I was sitting on the beach trying to get a suntan, and you saw the looks and you saw people coming towards you. So I ran away in the opposite direction. But it was a huge, huge success. And being there at that time, and the people just couldn't have been kinder. I mean, these are people unconnected with the film, but they just treated you like a prince. They invited you into their homes. They sort of fed you, gave you their wine that they'd made, or the liqueurs that they'd made. And honestly, they just couldn't have been nicer. Doing that just after the first episode was absolutely wonderful. And I mean, as you probably know, I wasn't too happy with the second series, and I didn't think it worked as well as it should. When I went back to film my next film after the show, the second series, I was more or less ignored. So it was a big jump from one extreme to the other.
How did you feel jumping into horror? Were you a fan of horror at the time? Was this something you wanted to do, or was it just a case of it came along and you were like, let's give this a go?
I mean, I have to say, in all sort of humility and apologies, that I'm not a horror fan. The horror genre, especially the horror genre that I actually came to be to sort of do in Italy. I mean, I would not go and see it unless I was involved in it. But I presumed what I was going to do was just do a Hammer House of Horror. I mean, I'd done the TV. I'd been in a film called, what was it called? The Curse of the Golem. I think, which is, I think, the first film I ever did with, God, I forgot his name. The young boy actor, Roger Hollywood, who was in Lassie, was Taylor. Roddy McDowell. I'd done that with him. I'd done The Ghoul. I'd done half a day's filming of a film called It. I Monster, no, it's called I Monster.
Right.
So I've been slightly involved in the genre, but you don't see the nasty bits. And I mean, you're doing it for money, you're not doing it for love. It's not it doesn't become a passion, and it doesn't become something that you're then married to, as for example, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lever. And good actors though they were, they got sort of stuck in doing horror, but to their benefit as well. But they were stuck and couldn't really get out.
And of course, going into a Lucio Fulci movie, who has somewhat of a reputation for being, let's say, passionate. Let's be nice and say passionate. How was it like working for him on Zombie Flesh Eaters? What was that experience like?
Well, I mean, that's the question I get asked. What was Lucio Fulci really like? And I have to say I've got no idea, because to know someone, you've got to. It isn't just knowing someone at work or when they're behind a camera, you're on the other side of a camera.
Yeah.
And there aren't. Looking back on it, I mean, most of the films that I've been in, there's been very little connection between me as an actor and the director as a human being to sort of socialize with. For Eagles Dare, never talked to director again, other than on the set. Cromwell, I didn't. The Ghoul, but the other two, the earlier ones, nothing at all. There's no connection. And the same sort of thing happened in Zombie, and there was no real sort of socializing with Lucio. Having said that, when I accepted doing the film, they said, "Well, you've got the part, but Lucio thinks that you have to come and meet you." So he flew over to London, and he and the casting director met up with me, and we had sort of dinner together. And we had a sort of long conversation. His English wasn't brilliant, but it was, my Italian was non-existent. So we sort of chatted away, I don't know, for about an hour or something over supper. And that was the closest that I got to him, and knowing, in all honesty, anything about him other than what I read. And this, of course, was the nicest side of Lucio. And it was mainly to determine what his hobbies were, what he liked doing. He had a passion for horses. He loved sailing. He adored his family. But other than that, nothing else came out. And then we got the professional Lucio on set, who had his own sort of way of doing things, which are a bit surprising then, because most directors behave quite well and don't get cross and don't shout and scream or stamp or throw fits and do extraordinary things, which I didn't actually see, but Richard Johnson saw. And then you see what someone is actually like when he's hard at work, behind the camera and in charge of an army of sort of technicians. And he surrounded himself by people who he'd worked with before, and they all knew exactly what he was like. And at the beginning of the show, he would do lots of sort of shouting, and that was just to sort of establish that he was the boss, and he was the one who was running it, and everything would be done his way. But he did have a short temper, I think, but I think that was just his professionalism. But on that side of it, he treated Richard Johnson and myself with total respect, and I don't remember him giving any acting advice or directorial advice to Richard or myself throughout the whole film. The sort of 7 weeks that we were doing it, he just relied on us doing it. But he did. He was quite hard on Aretha Gay, who was the lovely girl who goes swimming with the shark and who comes to a sort of bad end at the end of the film, because she wasn't an actress. She was exceptionally beautiful, but to get the best out of her, he probably tried the carrot first of all, but then he sort of tried the stick. So he was quite hard on her, which was not very nice to see. Yeah. But as I've sort of said on other occasions, Richard told me the story one day after he'd done a scene with Aretha. Fulci threw himself on the floor and started picking up mounds of earth and sticking it in his mouth and eating it. And Richard said, "Why are you doing that?" He said, "If I don't eat this, I'm going to eat her." because he was so, and she couldn't see it. This was just a performance for himself and for sort of Richard. But that was the only sort of odd side one saw of him, except for the one I've got the pictures of when we were filming a boat scene. And although I say that meeting in London, he'd said he was a wonderful sailor, this huge expertise, but it sailed across the Atlantic. We took charge of this little dinghy and managed to ram it into the side of the boat that we were on, putting quite a big hole in it. But he then blamed everyone else. And by luck, I took photographs of him in the boat, him coming off the boat, him hitting our boat, him walking down towards the crew who were on the boat to remonstrate them for leaving this boat in the way of him mishandling the boat that he was supposed to be on. Yeah. You can see the anger in his face and the anger in the way he's walking. So that those were the two sort of sides, the professional side and the side which sometimes went slightly awry. But I did a convention in America about 20 years ago, and there were about a dozen of his leading ladies who'd been in his films, and one that they were asked what he was like, they all said that he was a perfect gentleman, with the most beautiful manners, who could not have treated them in any kind of way, that he was totally professional, and they loved him. So that is it. It's the one question I keep on being asked. I can't really answer it, but I say all those ladies say he was fantastic. I have little, but this is what I do remember. And of course, I never worked for him. Yeah. So I would have done, but he obviously didn't want me to do something, or I was doing something else. And I think of that film he used. Al Cliver, I think he had used quite a lot before that, and I think Teaser was in another film that he did with Sonata. Right.
And on a more personal side to that movie as well, though, you just said before that you're not traditionally a horror fan or anything like that. So how does it feel when you're on set and it gets a bit grim towards the end of the movie? It gets a bit bloody, it gets a bit gory, it gets a bit mad. Were you kind of just sitting there thinking, what on earth have I signed up for? Or were you just totally game for it?
The thing was, I wasn't there for it. I mean, I did my bit, and then you disappeared, and then the real star of Zombie, which is the special effects, Janetta De Rossi came on, and they sort of set it all up with and I'd walked away to have a drink.
Okay.
While they got on with that, I saw nothing of that whatsoever until I saw the film for the first time, and when I'd been warned already. I mean, I was absolutely shocked. It was gruesome, and people obviously love it. I mean, I say it's not my cup of tea or cup of blood, whatever you want to call it. But I didn't really expect it even from the script.
So a little bit about the festivals, because you've been going to festivals for years now, and people still coming up to you, talking to you about Survivors, talking to you about Zombie Flesh Eaters, Contamination, all sorts of projects that you've done over the years. Did you ever think that, for a good 40 years after Zombie Flesh Eaters and Survivors, people were still going to be coming up and asking you about these projects and wanting to meet you and get signatures? Did you ever think that would be the legacy and you'd still be there doing that kind of thing?
Sorry, my voice is going silent. I mean, the whole thing was a complete surprise from the beginning. The film came out, but didn't get really any sort of good notices, and it would have sort of disappeared had it not been for the video Nasty Business. Right. And then it had started to have a life of its own, and that it obviously had a fan base. I mean, a huge fan base. I mean, all over the world, it had this huge fan base, and it went on and on and on. And I didn't really know anything about it till on the 25th anniversary. Bill Lustig did a version of it, which I recorded, and I saw scenes from it for the first time. And I remember soon after that, I went to my first convention, and I didn't know why I was going, and I wore a suit. And I just signed away. I mean, other people were sort of taking money, whatever. I just signed and signed and signed. Thanks for thanks for asking me. It's a nice afternoon. And then I started going to the others, and it was just, I mean, that's 40, 79, it's 46 years ago. I mean, Survivors is 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But, you know, Survivors hasn't gone through all the sort of DVDs and lasers and Blu-rays and 4Ks versions and every sort of language in the world that Zombie has. I mean, it is a peculiarly successful film. I mean, it is amazing what it's done. And I was told only the other day that there's Arrow producing another 4K version. Arrow's due to come out.
Nice.
I mean, it seems like only yesterday that Film Bristol brought out within the space of 6 months two 4K versions. So that a film like that should have a life like that is, I mean, it's, you know, I don't make money obviously out of the film, but I make money when I go to conventions. But it's had such a life, and that people still love it. And that's almost three generations of people who've sort of seen it, and all over the world. So I'm grateful for it. And however much I like it or don't like it, I'm sort of humbled by it in a way. And I love going to conventions. And I love to, I mean, I'm more than happy to talk to people about it. And I love the fact that they get so much out of it.
Yeah.
But it's their affection. It's a strange, this really strange, a strange affection that they have for this film. They like it. It makes them happy. Whatever the horrors, whatever in it, it just has that sort of beneficial effect on them.
I think definitely fans of this genre, the horror genre, and fans of that movie are super mega dedicated. And when they find something they love, whether it's from the 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way right through to contemporary day, when they find something they love, they latch on and they just can't let go of it. And it's a fantastic thing. And when you've been doing these conventions, I just wonder what's the strangest question you've been asked about your projects?
Strange thing was seeing a tattoo of me on somebody's back.
Oh, nice.
I've seen it twice on I mean, obviously different back. That took my breath away. I mean, I thought, what? It was a scene with Al Clive in the cabin when they were sort of killing zombies. That was the thing that I thought that is a little bizarre. Don't take your clothes off because I don't want to see what you've got on your back. But you won't be one there.
I love that. Ian, I can't wait to meet you again at the festival. I'm going to start wrapping this out now. I can't wait to meet you there again. I can't wait for everybody to meet you there again. I can't wait to show Zombie Flesh Eaters up on the screen. We're showing 2 episodes of Survivors. Just one last thing. Is there, apart from maybe these 2 projects that we've talked about mostly today, is there any role out there that you're the most proud of in your career that you think somebody should really check out and see what you're really made of, if you know what I mean? Like a role you're super proud of?
Well, it wouldn't be in films, I'm afraid. The episode of Colditz, I'm quite proud of. But the thing is, I mean, I think that I'm mainly a sort of a stage actor. Who's been lucky to do lots of telly and these sort of films. But I'm prouder, I think, of the work I've done on stage. And I mean, there won't be parts that I think all the people who are coming to Romford will really be interested in, but it's playing Dr. Faustus, it's playing Macbeth, it's playing Anthony and Cleopatra with Kate O'Mara. It's doing a Stoppard play, it's doing an Alan Bennett play. An unknown play, which is called Herman, which I just absolutely adore doing. But it's work that I've done in stage, when I know that I'm more in control, A, of myself, and B, of the audience, which appeals to me. And I would like to be a member of.
Excellent. And I was going to wrap out there, but I did get one last question off a good friend of mine asked me if I could ask you this question. And I don't know how it's going to go, so I did kind of put it to the side. But in 2008, there was a reboot of Survivors on the BBC. And he asked me if you had been given a call for a cameo on that show. And if you had have got the call, would you have done it, or did you get one at all and didn't want to do it? Strange question, I know, but I said I would ask.
Yeah, no. It's an interesting question. As you probably know, I mean, I tried to get the series redone twice.
Right.
Once with the BBC in London and once with the BBC in Scotland. Colin Gilbert, who was a producer of a Parahandy thing I did, said, was I serious about doing it and writing it? And I was. And both of the things were turned down, although Terry Nation himself had given his backing, and everything was okay with him. But that sort of both fell through. And then I heard it on the grapevine that they were doing another series, and I thought, well, that's a long time, but what the hell? So I tried to get in touch with them. I thought, I'd love to be in it, and if I could help, obviously. So I wrote a letter to whoever I was told was in charge, the producer, and I never got a reply. And 6 months later, I got a letter from the BBC saying, well, you've actually sent it to the wrong person. This is the person you should have sent that letter to. So I rewrote it and sent it off to that producer, and I never got a reply again. So I thought I'd better get in touch with Terry Nation's agent. So I rang up Terry Nation's agent, who had no idea who I was, and asked me to send him my CV, which I thought was a bit off-putting. And then I heard that in any case, they were doing it in a totally different way, that they were bringing it up to date, and that my character was obviously going to be out of it. So I sent a message, which again, I have no idea whether it got through or not, said that if I could help in any way, I'd be happy to. And that was the end. And I watched the first episode, which I wasn't very impressed by, and I didn't watch anymore.
Okay.
And that's why I'm glad COVID came along, and I'm glad thousands of people, I mean, it's all over the world. Somebody came to a convention that was actually there at Romford. There was a young couple there, and they just sort of said that people actually in China that they'd recommend it. Well, they couldn't get out of China, and they'd recommend watching the series. Whoever it was in China, the series had kept them sort of going all the way through. So that was that. That was sad. I'd love to be involved, but I wasn't. And I thought, sadly, from their point of view, they only did one sort of series and another. And that was the end of it. And it'll never come back again. So.
Well, when we do another reboot, we'll get you cameo on that. We'll do that.
What as, yeah.
But in the meantime, Ian, thank you so much for sitting down with me today and doing this. I'm told this is your first official sort of interview type podcast, so that to me is fantastic. I'm glad to have broken that cherry for you. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I can't wait to meet you again down at Romford and see the projects up on the big screen.
Well, that's very kind of you. So anyway, I will see you in just a week's time.
You will do.
Have a happy festival, and I hope all the guys and girls who sort of turn up there and have a fantastic time over the weekend. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'll wave out of my window to you over in Berwick-on-Tweed.